All right, and welcome to the analyst desk. That had to have been one of the silliest pieces of content that has ever been produced in the amateur scene. And I mean that seriously. I love your hairline. Who would have said such a nasty thing?
Well, the people who know that this is just a wig and actually I'm bald, secretly part of the bald crew, get in there. But you know what? For all that we're memeing a lot on there was actually some pretty interesting information to keep in mind, right? Like going into the games as well. And, now that we're in AD Necrox, let's focus on our game tonight. It's New Age Frost taking on Glaive Onyx.
Of course, man. I'm so excited to get straight in, and I'm just happy to escape with no neck jokes in the middle of it. And that means we get to cover our matchup in its entirety. And honestly, these two teams, while neither of them have been, let's say, impressing either of us or exceeding expectations, you could say Glaive Onyx are certainly at the top of the table, as you can see just over here-ish on your screen. 11-4, sitting nice and pretty. The problem is, for New Age Frost, they've had close games, they've had close series. It's just tough to finish it out and close out a win.
Yeah, and I believe as DJ mentioned, or you mentioned there, New Age Frost has actually not been 0-3'd at all. They've split their games every single week, which kind of tells us that they're a scrappy team and there is some hope here to be had. They're just struggling to be consistently winning for the most part here. 8-7 right now. They're literally middle of the pack, sitting at 5th place, tied with Gamers for God. And on the other side, Glaive Onyx, their 11-4 record as well is ever so slightly inflated, as last week, I believe it was Rage Quit forfeited all 3 games. So realistically, they're probably closer to 8-4, which is still better than 8-7, but the gap is perhaps not as big as it looks in standings.
Yeah, and I mean, we've had a lot of scheduling issues, even some mentions there earlier on, but I mean, for a quote unquote, we had this conversation so long ago, championship team, you would expect some more from the likes of Glaive Onyx, but of course their roster is completely different. So take it with a massive grain of salt, if you will. But I want to go specifically into the reasons why I think Glaive Onyx is still strong and why they're still contenders for that title. And that starts right at the beginning of everything. The top lane, the boss 837, his stats look pretty good. And the top lane matchup tonight, I'm expecting to be pretty crazy because we got an innovator on the other side of the rift in Potato, who is always so much fun to watch.
Yeah, so we've cast New Age Frost before, and I remember Potato pulled out some interesting things. It was one of the earlier Gwen uses here in Excellency Heavy. So innovation's all good and well, but I also feel like that is the same root cause of the problems that Potato has here. If you catch your opponents off guard, great. But if your picks are catching yourself and your team off guard, not so great here. And Potato's not exactly at the best laning stat, shall we say. Right now, 7th from the bottom in terms of average, or actually 7th from the top in terms of average deaths per game, which is not a stat you want to see. And in terms of top laners, 2nd highest death, just behind YO Boomer's Papa Francesco here. So that's not a stat you really want to see going into Glaive Onyx's top lane.
Yeah, and I mean, while Potato can surprise us, he has done it before. To me, the innovation hasn't been there, and the spicy new picks, it doesn't really favor where the meta is headed. I mean, obviously, just coming off of a new patch, and with things like Hullbreaker maybe coming in a few weeks or so, maybe we can get some more excitement up there. But for now, I really think this top lane matchup is pretty boss favored. I'd love to see some spicy picks come out from Potato, maybe see a carry like the Jax or a Fiora or even a Camille. But to me, I think it's just going to be Volibear 2.0, and all that's not too exciting.
Glaive Onyx top laner is Giga, right? Not... I just want to double check my stats because I think...
Sorry, it switched on my thing. Giga's mentioned me before. This is the reason why we have problems. I was still looking at the correct stats. It's just a different name. But yeah, Giga has been a consistent top laner, and this is why I favor him in the matchup. Sorry, the boss, LBK Lemon's top laner. I love you so much, man. But I'm not going to put you over Potato, but I will put Giga over Potato. And I think, again, I'd love to see something from Potato to whip out like a carry, but I think Giga can just play the Rumble. He can play the Gragas. He can play anything and probably just win lane through it.
And if you're talking about innovators for Potato, Giga's pretty much the opposite here. 6 games of Gangplank, 3 games of Cho'Gath. The man's not going to move off these picks unless you ban it or pick it yourself, because it's worked so well here. Giga right now in terms of CS per minute is sitting 5th in the entire league here. And with that Gangplank, that's even more gold in your pocket on a scaling champion here. You have to punish this. You can't just let him get away with it, or else come the late game, when Giga finally gets off his island, sails across down to the bot side there, that Gangplank's cannon barrages is going to be ripping everybody apart.
All right, and let's go straight there. I think this is not a bad segue into what could be one of the big matchups of the night. For Glaive, Onyx, Tupper, and Jado have been performing pretty well, but for New Age Frost, Array and Chaser, man, those two, when they're on their game, outright win games. Chaser's Thresh in particular is just incredible to watch. Flash hook predictions, massive flays in a team fight. I mean, Chaser, when he is on, he really can show up and almost an MVP contention in my mind.
And that's sort of the support since we're here. Both these supports like to play tanks. For Chase, as you mentioned, the Thresh there, Nautilus, Alistair, Leona, all these big engaged supports here is what Chaser likes to play. And for the side of Jado, he too likes to play these sort of tank supports, but with the exception, likes to play the Galio a little bit more here. So I'm looking at these supports to be kicking off a lot of the action outside of lane as well, and well, even within lane, because both these AD carries do kind of like to sit back and farm a little bit here, and their supports don't.
Yeah, I mean, Tupper up there in the excellency rating for a reason, right? I mean, he's high up there because he plays the game safe. He can sit back, scale, or he can even go a little bit aggressive in the early game. We've seen Tupper try to get involved nice and early on, but I think the strength of this bot lane in particular is their late game team fighting. And if you can get them past the mid game, if you can push this squad beyond that 20-25 minute mark, when you can get 3 items, that is really when Tupper comes online and these scaling ADCs just start to rip through the likes of the frontliners. And man, I've seen Tupper do it time and time again in the few times we've got to play him. Even watching VODs of this guy, his positioning in team fights looks really good. And along with Jado there, whether it is a Peel Enchanter or an Engage tank, either way, they play the 2v2 incredibly well, and that transitions into the late game.
As much as we talk about Tupper being such a big factor here for the side of Glaive Onyx, Array Mate is actually higher in terms of raw stats, in terms of damage per minute. Tupper is number 7 on the list, no mean feat here, but Array is actually number 5 CS per minute. Array is above again at number 6, where Tupper is at number 8 here, and part of that is a function of the fact that Puffles and Giga for Glaive Onyx do demand a bigger share of the resources, but still, Array's able to pump out the numbers, and I think that's why we're focusing on the bot lane as sort of the most even matchup on paper here between the two teams, and probably the best indicator of how the game's going to go. If one side starts running away with that, well, that could very well be the tipping point for the entire match.
All right, and then how we get there, this is probably the most important part of every bit of analysis that we could cover. Of course, it's a jungle matchup, right? Even though this might not be at the top of our list for the junglers in the league, you still always need to look at the jungle matchup and where they're going. Obviously, we got a lot of talk about it in the pre-show about early lane ganking, level 2, level 3, maybe a 3 camp clear into a gank, things like that from New Age. Age King, whether it is the Nunu or something else like the Jarvan, he loves to fight early and stick around one lane in particular. Often it is bot lane, but McShootums has some work to do on finding an identity. I think it's not all so cut and clear, and I'm curious where you think McShootums is going to go, whether it is trying to match the early game presence, or we're going to see something like a farmer, whether it's the Rumble or Diana or something along those lines.
Yeah, I'd be a little surprised to see sort of farming champions coming from McShootums here. He too likes to play very aggressively early, and from what I've heard is sort of considered the brains of the team, because McShootums runs the draft and shot calls the early game here with the jungle. Now, there's a bit of mismatch in terms of laning for the most part. Glaive, you can gank any lane, and usually and any of their lanes can carry here, right? Giga likes to play carry champions as well. Whereas for New Age Frost, Age King has been restricted primarily to that bot lane, to that mid lane for the most part, because Potato doesn't always play the carries, and sometimes it's the riskier side to gank here. So for McShootums, I suspect we're going to see a little bit more attention down to that bot lane as well to match, trusting Giga to be able to handle that in that 1v1 on that island alone, and maybe into the mid lane a lot, because that's the one lane we haven't talked about, and that's the one lane I think that New Age Frost have at least on paper, a significant advantage in terms of stats.
All right, you have to apologize if you do hear my dogs in the background. They love what you're saying, RMC, but they just can't wait to get onto the Rift. They're excited as I am. And mid lane is one of the last sort of major points before we go into broader team analysis and where both these teams lie. Warspite is... I mean, it's a question mark in my mind where Warspite has really shown up. I mean, I think his team has done a great job of sort of allowing him to play his own style and really just sit there in mid lane and be that rock solid mage player. On the other end, though, New Age Frost Rio is one of the players that really exploded out into Heavy League early on, and this could be a tipping point for New Age Frost if they can get Rio on an aggressive pick, maybe something like the Yasuo, or again, one of these really aggressive champions, even like the Diana. Rio could really tip the scales here for New Age Frost and take not only a game off of Glaive, but maybe the series in its entirety.
Yeah, and generally that has been how New Age has been sort of winning their games for the most part. It's off Age King, pathing creatively in the early game, getting a lead usually in the mid lane for Rio here. And we look at what Rio has been playing. Victor, LeBlanc, Lucian, all of them very lane dominant champions for the most part, especially with a little bit of jungle assistance here. And because of that, Rio has managed to make top 10 in terms of damage per minute, in terms of gold difference here. And we look across the Warspite or Puffles here, and Puffles isn't in the top 10. Not to say that he's not had amazing games, but Puffles has had good and has had bad games. When Puffles gets camped early, tends to fall behind and tends to struggle to find relevance in the game here. But when he's ahead, he can carry. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I said I want to see McShootums bounce between bot and mid as well, to make sure that Puffles doesn't fall behind, that H King can't get that early gank off and let Rio take over the game just from that mid lane.
All right, with the full lane breakdown now from you, RMC, I love to hear it. We're going to throw it to a quick break while we get ready for the teams and their draft phase. We'll be back in just a few moments as they hit that ready button. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a minute. Welcome back, everyone, here, and it is time for Game 1 Draft. Told you it wouldn't be long, and we're already 2 bans in. The Hecarim and the Tristana are both going to be taken off the board here by New Age Frost right at the beginning of things. Glaive going to ban the Xin Zhao and the Wukong. Those Xin Zhao technology skills, man, they are not going to be shown tonight as skillful as you want them to be. It is taken away, along with the Nocturne as well from New Age. But there's still a lot of powerful champions up here, RMC, that typically we see banned out much earlier than this.
Yeah, I mean, the usual suspects, things like that Rumble, that Diana, even potentially the Kindred, they've all been left online, and it's largely because these junglers, Age King and McShootums, don't necessarily favor them. I think the Hecarim especially, that's definitely a target ban which has come back because of Divine Sunder in 11.11. McShootums played all 3 games last week.
And Ezreal, first pick, there's no surprise. The AD carry can do absolutely anything. He's safe, he can farm by himself. He even has good lane pressure post Sheen, and especially when Divine Sunderer comes through. So that's a nice pick. But Glaive thinking about locking in this Akali completely blind. Could be a flex pick between top and mid, but not sure you want to do that with so many options to peel away. Set is still available, one of Akali's arch nemesis, and this would make a lot much more sense to me, getting the lane bully and Varus. The poke build, man, it has been so good for these marksmen to play off of, and it's locked in.
For sure. I mean, in terms of the AD carry meta right now, we've moved away from that Jinx from the affiliates. It's Ezreal, it's Varus, it's Kog'Maw right now, who are some of the highest priority picks. Ezreal, we talked about the scaling, but the early games that are weak, and you've got a small window there where Varus can try and take over the game here, and Varus goes up pretty nicely as well. Thresh, we talked about the fact that both Chaser and Jato like this champion here, so the fact that Glaive is able to pick this up, going to make them feel a lot more comfortable, especially on that immobile carry Varus here.
Love to see something like the Varus. I would have loved to see Aphelios, considering he just did win the Cup tournament for a wild card red, but sadly won't be able to see it. And this is the Yasuo. This could be massive. Gragas Yasuo, 2 champions work extremely well together. The knockup is simple to execute. And if you wanted to see Puffles try to match the aggression from Rio, this would be the answer to it. Already know that Chaser has his Thresh in, so that is a massive pick for him. Still waiting on the Yasuo lock. I'm surprised they're actually thinking about this one for so long. But okay, here we go. New Age Frost, they're going to pick it up.
The instant Akali counter, well, I don't want to call it a counter, but the instant Akali lockdown here from Glaive to answer that Yasuo here. And I know, Necrox, you were saying that you want to see Rio on something like the Yasuo. Well, they got it. They've got set up as well. And for the side of Glaive, I think now is when you start banning out things like the Ornn here, other things that can enable this Yasuo, maybe the Braum ban coming through as well, or the Alistar. Wait, Nautilus is actually still on the table, so you definitely, that's another bigger pick, I think, even more so than the Braum.
Yeah, you really have to think about what kind of setup you can get for this team, because Ezreal is going to do Ezreal things, right? Just by itself, you don't really need anything there to support it. The Yasuo is going to be the focus point. Akali is picked up for Glaive, so they want this Akali all the same. They just wanted to wait a little bit later to pick it. As my dogs, man, they love it too. They love the assassin pick. Kayn going to be taken off the board. That's interesting. A lot of really target bans coming through.
And for the side of New Age Frost here, it's not just, you know, taking off comfort champs. You also want to take out champions who can get into the back, can burst down that Yasuo, can burst down that Ezreal. And I think that's why we saw the Akali pick up here, was specifically to deal with Ezreal. You've got Flash, you've got your Arcane Shift. Well, Akali's got a whole bunch of things to follow you as well. The Shuriken Flip, the perfect execution, and, well, Akali can take a flash of her own as well. And now the question is, what is New Age Frost going to ban here? Are they going to continue targeting that jungle and leave that Gangplank potentially open for Giga?
All right, what do we see? Interesting to see Alistar banned away, considering Hex Flash, I believe, is still disabled, so Champion might be a little underpowered in that respect. Gangplank taken away, well done. Gwen is still available if we do want it. Would mean a double magic solo lane look here for Glaive if they want to pick that one up. Let's see, with 9 seconds left on the board, what do they want? I could only assume it would be a jungler to match the presence, and that is still available. And Rumble is the selection, has been incredibly powerful, especially with the Varus. The range on this composition already is looking really scary to deal with.
I'm a little surprised that actually Rumble went so far down in prio here. It is still one of the best first picks in the game here, not just in the jungle, but also strong in the mid lane here. Freak is only half wrong in terms of what he's talking about sometimes. Gwen now, yeah, I was going to say for New Age Frost, because they've got the Yasuo, because, you know, they've got the Ezreal here, they can't afford to be the ones to pick up the Gwen, but I am a little worried because Potato has not looked too hot on this Gwen so far, and while Gwen's base stats are somewhat overtuned and her abilities are very strong, they are mostly not point and click, so you have to target them properly, and that's the rough part.
Yeah, I'm actually curious whether Glaive are going to take the Akali into the Gwen and they want the matchup. It seems not terrible, to be honest. Akali is a melee champion, doesn't have to worry about the field. The Hallowed Mist. Nautilus, as you were saying, that's an easy knock-up, easy setup for the Yasuo to use. So that one will come through. And now Glaive have to decide, how do they want to deal with the solo lanes? Because that is the threat this game from New Age Frost. Yes, you have jungle presence, of course, as always. Gragas can get in there with a body slam flash, but the solo laners here for New Age Frost is what they have indexed in heavily. Glaive, with their response, 10 seconds left, RMC, what do they do?
Well, honestly, here they could still pick a jungle. Rumble could be mid. Rumble does pretty decently into the Yasuo, and it's kind of risky with the Gwen, but you can kind of take advantage of the early levels here. Now, I really do like the Akali pickup from Glaive, and the Gwen pickup for me now is very questionable, because you kind of mentioned that Akali is not just decent into the Gwen. Akali has one of the highest win rates in lane against the Gwen here because of how Gwen works. Gwen trades great in extended trades. You get the autos off, and that lets you get more snip stacks going when you use that Q there. But at the same time, the reason why she's busted is because you have to get in range of her to fight her with that Hallowed Mist. Akali can do both, and not only that, she can sit in your mist with her shroud. The duration's fairly comparable for the most part here, so the initiative lies wholly in the hands of the Akali here. But Akali for Glaive Onyx, whether it be Giga or Puffles playing this, has to kind of overperform, because there's so many different targets you need to take down. You need to kill the Gwen, you need to kill the Ezreal, you need to kill the Yasuo here. The Yasuo is probably your lowest priority because other people can kill him, but it's just so many different targets. And while Rumble, great, good, sure, it needs the lockdown, and it's not the same level of burst. Same with the Varus here. You need to get those blight stacks rolling before you can really pop a target, and that win wall potentially can mess that up.
Yeah, and it's all based around the blighted stacks. And of course, the easiest way to do that is with the Corrupting Chains with the ulti, and you can't do that into a Gwen. You can't do that into Yasuo, and if you hit Nautilus, it's only going to provide you so much value. So interested to see how this Varus plays out. Of course, has been almost perma-banned across every professional scene in League of Legends. It is an extremely high presence rate, but not a high pick rate because it's never available. So I'm actually really excited to see that one on how it plays out. But New Age Frost versus Glaive. Let's take a look back at how these two teams are going to approach these major objective fights. Of course, both these teams are pretty close in objective numbers, but Glaive just edging out on dragons and barons and even turrets. How can you begin to team fight? It feels like Glaive have so many tools to access, but it's just going to have to come together with the Rumble, with the Akali, with the Varus. I don't know. I feel like we're going to get a lot of chaos, and whether it's going to pay off is a big question.
For sure. And it is going to be very high skill execution between both of these teams, because as you mentioned, New Age Frost have so many disengage tools or ways to protect themselves, right? We talked about the Hallowed Mist kind of blocking the ultimate coming through from various Chains of Corruptions, but it also works really well for Sejuani, for the Rumble here. So you kind of need to get past all of that. Wind Wall blocks all of that as well. And so despite the fact that Glaive have more initiation tools, I actually think it's going to be harder for their team to execute here. They've kind of got to make sure they have vision, and they've got to get somebody in to make sure they can lock down that Gwen a little bit as well. New Age Frost, their composition has it easier. We talked about all these disengage tools for them, but they've got plenty of engage tools as well. Nautilus, to me, is one of the strongest supports on the current patch right now, especially if you've got a Rumble or something that can pair with it, like the Yasuo as well. That Dredge line, the ultimate, the depth charge as well, just point and click initiate. If they find anybody, they can kind of go with it here and just instantly pop people. And not to mention Gragas as well. That cast, the Exploding Class, is going to be absolutely massive, because Glaive need to kind of set up their lines right. They need to make sure that their Varus is protected, and the range on their champions is very specific as well. Rumble needs to be in a specific range. You blow all your spells, you overheat, you go in there. If you can't get a range for your spells, not great. If you're slow to the fight, really, really bad. So that explosive cast is going to be really strong. The lanes is where I worry for New Age Frost a little bit, where I do think their lane matchups aren't great necessarily. If Akali gets the Gwen, if Rumble gets the Yasuo, Glaive can win that out. And so New Age Frost just need to make sure they negate the early game, and then they should be in a perfect spot come mid to late.
Okay, interesting for now. We're seeing in the client select. I thought we had everything on point here, RMC, but we might have overlooked one lane swap. Giga, I was talking about his ability to play Rumble. He loved it last split. This time, he might be the one piloting this champion into the Gwen.
Yep.
Again, you are a melee range champion. You get into the Hallowed Mist. If you land your E, the slow can be pretty detrimental to Potato. The biggest question mark to me is Equalizer into Gwen is one of the worst interactions for a Rumble player on planet Earth. If you are not in the field, it does literally nothing. No slow, no damage, absolutely nothing applies. So Giga has basically no gank setup at all. McShootums would have to be the one to engage, and I don't love the idea of leaving a Gwen, a season 2021 champion in a side lane, to free farm.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like I said, if you match the Akali into Gwen, the Rumble into Yasuo, I think that's a more comfortable matchup for both of those champions. As it stands, Akali into Yasuo becomes more of a skill matchup for the most part here, a bit of a sustained fight. And Rumble into Gwen, Rumble will win early here. You are a great counter to most melee champions. The issue is you can't really punish the Gwen if she doesn't want to interact with you too much, right? She can just kind of skip away, and then it's kind of tough to try and trade with that Gwen. She just needs to farm up, and then once you get that 1 item, 1.5 items for that Gwen, suddenly Rumble's real rough. Like you pointed out there, Necrox, Equalizer into Hallowed Mist, that's not a fun time, and she can just kind of get out of that rather quickly, even if you're inside her mist. So, Glaive Esports Div decided to up the difficulty level a little bit for themselves on the composition, which was already going to be tougher to pilot.
All right, and I mean, I have question marks about the lane assignments here for Glaive, but, you know, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They drafted the Rumble, obviously, on purpose. They knew it was a flex pick. They knew they could put these two on either side, so maybe there's something they know that we don't. So I'm going straight back to what I know, which is bot lane. Array on Ezreal. This champion is absolutely busted out the wazoo. Chaser on the Nautilus. This is one of his greater champions as well. Sadly, the Thresh taken away. Tooper and Jat have a really strong matchup in the Varus and the Thresh. I think this lane could go either way. I think the Thresh Varus has a little bit more finesse and nuance in it. You can flay the engage away. You can then get the anti-heal in onto Array with those arrows coming through. But I'm curious what your thoughts are, MC. Are Age King and McShootums headed down here, or are they going to these solo lanes? Because this bot lane could get really deadly post 6. So much lockdown for both of them.
For sure, and because of the Ezreal and because of the Thresh, the bot lane ganks just got a whole lot more difficult here. Thresh with that Lantern for that immobile Varus, and Ezreal being Ezreal, right? Like, it's just so hard to lock down. I expect to see just a poke war trade, and I'm going to give the edge slightly over to Chaser because Nautilus is sort of one of the counters to Thresh. When the hook comes out from Thresh, Nautilus just throws out his hook, and they should be able to win that trade. For the most part here, I think New Age Frost, you kind of go to your solo lanes. They are more important here. Array just needs to farm up. You're not trying to look for the kills on the Ezreal necessarily to get him skilling. So get your Gwen, get your Yasuo ahead there, Age King. And for Glaive, you kind of want to get your Varus a little bit of an edge, but it's an Ezreal. So that's really, really tough. You can still go down, get the kills onto Chaser, and that wouldn't be a bad call by any means here. But I'd say for side of Glaive, take a look at how the lanes play out a little bit. If your Rumble needs some help, go up there and help Giga. If Giga's fine on an island, yeah, then go bot, try and get that Nautilus down, because an under-leveled Nautilus is a squishy Nautilus, and the engage becomes a free kill.
All right, I like it. Glaive may be playing things by ear. New Age Frost coming in with a definite game plan on how to take game number 1. On the other side of this break, Dia and DJ, the D&D duo, we're going to break it down on the call to tell you exactly what happens and transpires on the Rift. For now, RMC and I will see you later on the Analyst Test post game 1. We'll see you in just a minute. Stay tuned.
All right, guys. Well, if you were paying attention about 30 seconds ago, we almost hit the rift, but now we're actually hitting the rift. My screen is frozen, and DJ, I want to know if yours is too.
It is indeed, good sir. It is indeed, as hopefully this will alleviate in just a second here. Maybe just reconnecting, of course, after the pause. This is a pretty typical problem. And there you go. We got motion. So,
Holy
as predicted,
moly.
we are going to get out onto Summoner's Rift here, Dia.
What a struggle it has been to get to this point. But New Age Frost and Glaive Esports Onyx have finally made it, and the struggle bus stops for one of them. And it isn't New Age Frost. New Age Frost, they really have their work cut out for them in this game. Not just in terms of the standings, but if you were listening to our analysts, in terms of the draft as well.
Yeah, I would say kind of in general, both of these compositions are going to be a little hard to run. There are parts of it that are easy. There are parts of it that are not. And New Age definitely have a couple of those pieces here. The most notable one, of course, being the fact that we do need to pilot this Gwen effectively here in the top lane. And we've seen Potato on it before. It wasn't perfect on that occasion, but probably has been practiced a little bit more and should have a better laning phase into this Rumble than it would have into Puffles Akali. I will say one thing about the Rumble, though. Giga is quite the aficionado on this champion. It has been his pocket top laner for quite a long time. He is very, very cracked with this pick, and I'm a little shocked that it made it all the way into phase 2 in this draft and that Glaive were able to pick it up for themselves.
Yeah, wasn't it both Rumble and Gwen that we were like, are you sure you're letting this through all the way through what might have been the draft, but ended up just being into that second phase? It's a rare occurrence here, and it shows a priority definitely on reactivity is what I got from this, because it was a very safe first pick from New Age Frost with the Ezreal, and expectedly a lane that they don't really want to play around right now, but the Varus Thresh wants to play around that bot lane, and the Gragas Yasuo punishes that immobile carry and his support with a big team fight. So I feel like at the very least, both these teams are really playing with their heads on straight.
Yeah, nice trading here in the bottom lane. Couple of roots in. Array's actually going to dash in. Tuber's in trouble.
Yeah, Tuber does get ignited there. Manages to just barely survive. I was looking at that going, nah, it's not a kill. It's not a kill. Almost ended up being one. And it's just off of, really, Tuber and Jant being a little bit overconfident there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to disrespect Ezreal as a laner, just from experience here. He's not the most threatening champion, it feels like, without a lot of consistent DPS to get. Well, hold on here as we got an early top lane gank.
This is also definitely overconfidence, overestimating yourself, because Potato, for all that he can resist CC, can't resist it for long, and that first blood does end up going over to Giga on the Rumble. The champion that we were surprised he even got his hands on is now off to a great start.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we talk about with comfort levels here. He knows this champion in and out, and yes, that's a bad matchup for him throughout the lane and, later stage of the lane, but look at the wave. You just look at the wave in that scenario, and it's just wave management there between Potato and Giga. Giga's got the wave in an absolutely perfect spot. He's communicating with his jungler. It's the simplest, clear into gank you'll ever see here in the early portions of a League of Legends game at high elo, and McShootums and Giga make that first blood look incredibly easy.
Now, Rio's managing his wave pretty well at the same time. Pushing up in the mid lane might allow Age King to get himself a double scuttle, because McShootums is not the best early game skirmisher. So it will actually end up being a small advantage given over to the Gragas, at least in terms of the jungle CS, to answer back what just happened in the top lane.
Yep, and that is a little bit of a punish on the pathing there for that gank, but if you do take a look, there are still camps available for McShootums. Now they are being pinged out here by Age King. He's right onto those Raptors. I don't know if he knows that the Krugs are still up, but this is nice counter jungling by Age King and really making that early first blood costly here for McShootums. Really do like the response, but a hook gonna land in the bottom lane.
Oh, Chaser actually, he's got some pretty big blight stacks on him, and that is a concerning thing whenever we see these start to add up, especially as we get later into the game. But early into the game, they can hurt quite a bit as well. I'm surprised that there was no investment of that blighted quiver piercing arrow.
Yep, do believe that blighted quiver piercing arrow has been nerfed on this patch, but another one going to land. We'll probably see it here, Dia.
Not nerfed enough. It looks like Chaser's going to go down to that last auto, and Array barely escaped with his life. Another hook lands, and this time Chaser does not get away.
Yeah, you can't let two land there. You get to shield one and go low, but the second one, that arrow's always going to pierce you for the missing health damage. You do not survive two of those, but can they survive this gank?
Oh, Jat gets another hook, good lord, and it stops that gank right in its tracks. The fact that Array can't follow up anymore for fear of his life, he makes it so the Age King's just wasted time in that bot lane where McShootums, he's going into the mid lane. He's got that melee champion to stack the Winter's Wrath, and now Rio in a bit of a tough spot right now. Permafrost gets popped, and Rio has to flash away after being ignited.
Yeah, give some credit there to Rio, though, for being able to get out of that situation. That is not favorable for him in the 2v1 chase to the top side of the lane against the champion with a lot of lockdown there in the Sejuani. Nicely done to get out, but he will be without his flash now, so playmaking will certainly be limited as Puffles does tick over to that level 6 mark as well. Potato, he might be caught out a little bit here. His jungler's nearby, though.
All right, let's see what goes down over here, because Giga's just dropped the equalizer on nothing. So Potato actually gets to exist in a rather... What is the word I'm looking for, DJ? Like, unabashed is what I'm searching for. Maybe, like, free, happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think unabashed is pretty on brand there for what just happened in that situation. You know, I think Giga looking to cut off the escape route there for Potato, thinking he had no help coming and couldn't get away. And instead, Potato just sees where it goes and says, you know, my jungler's nearby, my mid laner's coming to roam. I can just stand here. I don't need to go anywhere with this shroud up. You know, yes, the equalizer could hurt me if it's laid down and I walk over it, but nothing else can. So unfortunately, the coordination just not quite there from Glaive Onyx, but they'll still be very happy with the state of the game here. 1k gold up at the 7-minute mark. No Drake's taken just yet, but they do have a lot of scaling options here in the Sejuani for tank stats in this virus. So they should be feeling okay about the state of the game, but are going to want to be looking for some plays here like this one. Another hook.
Lord. Chat, please, and we're getting excited. It's not converting into kills right now, but the fact remains that even these hooks landing is giving Ezreal so much less control over the lane because Array and Chaser have to play scared.
Yeah, I was sort of mentioning it earlier. You know, Ezreal is often a very underestimated laner, just considering the way his champion works and the fact that some of his damage is skill shot based. But he can be a very strong laner, particularly with, you know, CC setup. That's why we see a lot of Ezreal Leona lanes, and it's been going well for Array so far. Still up on CC, but a lot of that has been made up by Jat hitting these hooks, and we've seen one kill go over to Glaive because of them. I can only imagine that more are coming if he keeps this up.
I'm understanding now what the priority was around this Thresh Varus, because they're making the game about them in a weird way. We've seen a kill happen top side, albeit we've seen some ganks thrown into the mid lane, but very quickly, you've got to do something to address the Varus problem, or a well-farmed Varus with a kill under his belt going lethality is going to make it impossible for people like Yasuo and Age King to play the game.
Yeah, and I think what's really nice about this lane and something that I'm looking for is for Jat to roam. When you play this lethality Varus, clearing waves is really, really easy. It's extremely safe, and Jatto has already been locked in on these hooks. We know Thresh is a champion that can get out on the map, that can help the rest of his lanes, provide a ton of utility. I want to see Jatto pick up that role and spread this sort of playmaking to the rest of the map. I expect him to go back and look for mobility boots at some point and start to do that, as he's going to do it now with this lantern there. Gets his jungler out to safety, and they do take the first Drake. Another hook lands. There's no follow-up on this one, though.
That was funny, pulling Array over the wall as well. I'm sure had a small panic button going off in his head, but the disengage was the plan for Glaive Esports because they got everything that they really needed in that play. They're not being too greedy in a lot of these lanes. They're not going for overzealous sort of overextensions. They, especially around that dragon, recognize that getting the Drake at this point in the game is already a win.
Yep, that Drake going to be a reward for a lot of their good early pathing, a little bit of the gold lead as well. That will be the objective they do take. A hook now going to land the other direction. Jatto's in trouble.
Yeah, heal instantly gets burned, so does the flash, but saving the exhaust there, knowing that he can live through that damage, Shadow manages to escape relatively scot-free, where Giga might not be so lucky. He's got McShootums in his pocket, though, and they're putting out some good damage onto Potato. There goes the equalizer, and that is a very dead Gwen.
Okay, nicely done there at the end of the day by Giga, holding on to the equalizer for the long-term trade there. We heard it on the desk. You can't really lay that one down while the Shroud is up for Gwen. That Hallowed Mist can defend you from it, but once the Hallowed Mist was down, there was no longer any fear for throwing down the equalizer. They pick up the kill, and now they're looking for some more on bottom lane.
Okay, you can actually pull off this dive here because you've got the cask, and the double knockup is just going to secure it. Tooper and Jap, for the first time this game, do overestimate their limits, do stick around when New Age Frost had signed their death warrants.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think there was anywhere for them to go there, Mr. Dia, as they come down. There was still a flash on Age King. You can't really get away with that one once the play's already happening. And lovely cross-map stuff coming in here from New Age Frost. We talked about the fact that their composition a little hard to execute. That is the part that's not hard to execute. You flash, you hit that belly bump, you either do that or the Nautilus ulti, and Rio comes in over the top. Lovely dive onto the bottom lane. They pick up 2, and they close the gold gap here. Dead even game at 11 minutes.
And those 2 are for Rio as well. The Yasuo was a really big part of New Age Frost's game plan. Rio needs to be unleashed in the team fights, needs to be deadly, and now with a little bit of gold injection, the Berserker's Graves already picked up on top of some lifesteal should be a very big threat.
Yeah, Berserker Greaves, a little bit of lifesteal already. Rio looking super, super good. And remember, this has been the main carry threat for New Age throughout their run here in Heavy League this season. It's great to see him pick up these sort of early-ish kills, get this Yasuo to a point where he can blow people up, where he can carry. This is how New Age have been winning these games, have been scrapping out victories in every single series, regardless of who their opposition has been. So great to see their carry already accelerated. I expect to see fights centered around Rio, at least for New Age Frost, as they're going to want to hit that Gragas Yasuo combo as many times as possible here as this game progresses.
They're already doing really well in terms of setting up those plays at the same time, although Age King found himself in a little bit of a difficult position here. Doesn't look like he's got an escape, but as Puffles commits over the wall, he gives him a belly bump to safety, just barely getting caught out by the Glacial Prison and going down.
Yeah, the Gragas there, Age King getting his hand caught in the flask, so to speak, as he's caught on the enemy Raptor camp. I'm not sure what the plan there was. Maybe looking for that ult combo setup along with Rio, but just gets completely stunned, CC chained up, and once you're locked down by that Glacial Prison from McShootums, Puffles can just come in and clean you up. So bit of an overstep from the leader of New Age here, and now McShootums is going to drop this Rift Herald in the top lane. Yeah, nice little poke from Potato, but yeah, that's a Sejuani. You're not going to do enough there.
McShootums is so funny. He drops the Rift Herald and is like, you know what? I'm not even going to be punished for this. I'm just going to start backing. And you're right. The Sejuani never going to go down in that scenario. It's an easy couple hundred gold that gets picked up. And Glaive, who were ahead before, now start to pull ahead just a little bit again by utilizing that Rift Herald, the objective priority that they've got. And really the only way to turn that around is what you mentioned earlier, finding skirmishes and setting them up around Rio.
Yeah, setting up around Rio is going to be the focus from New Age. We mentioned it here. I think that's what Age King was looking for there when he died. So keep your eyes on these two members, the Nautilus as well here for Chaser. That's where this team fight is going to come. The setup will be important. I want Age King to find some flank angles to really hit critical targets in these fights. Rio's going to get chunked out a little bit. The Drake is up. River control belongs to Glaive here, as they also have the Scuttle Crab, and they're just going to start it in the face of New Age.
Now, remember, New Age don't have a whole lot of vision here, although they do just barely have a little bit on the Drake. Good hook from Jat, though, brings Age King right in. No smite now, as he's had to flash away, and Puffles is caught out on the side here, tries to finish off a Ray, but doesn't quite get it. Instead, gets pulled to safety by Jat again, and goes back in to finish off Rio. The Dragon and this team fight are both going over, and Potato is trying to save the day with this Gwen, but can't make it happen, even on the most OP of champions, gets exhausted and has to back away for another day.
Yeah, he is forced back, and the fight falls apart for New Age there. Nice work from Glaive. We were just talking about the fact that we wanted setup for New Age, but it's like Glaive heard us there. They were in the river first. They were ready to go for that Drake, and it just made approaching too hard. There was no way for Age King to find a flank angle, to get a belly bump onto a critical target like Tooper. Instead, it's Arraymate who gets caught out a little bit by the engage from Puffles. Yes, he doesn't kill the Ezreal, but he chunks him out enough that he cannot fight. It's all on Rio after that. He gets blocked out by McShootums, and the priority targets here for New Age Frost are hunted down incredibly efficiently by Glaive. They pick them off, they chunk them out, they win the fight, they pick up their second Drake of the game, and they're now poised for this dragon stacking. So look for them to be set up around that Drake coming up in 3 minutes 45 seconds as they look for Cloud Soul here in the next 10 minutes.
You know, it's funny, actually, as you mentioned that Puffles is the thing that catches out Array. Not because you don't expect an Akali to be on top of your ADC, but because Potato is the thing that Puffles was compared to in the draft in terms of the effectiveness of the Shroud, and it's looking a lot like he's got his own Hallowed Mist with the amount of disarray that New Age Frost get thrown into when they see that cooldown go down. When Puffles is off of their immediate vision, they don't seem to know what to do to set themselves up for a team fight, whether to rotate around, whether to all pile into that Shroud and risk being CC'd down by McShootums and Tooper. It's a really tough call, and it's hard to play around an Akali who can delete your carries.
Yeah, Akali is always such a scary champion to go up against, particularly in the hands of someone like Puffles. On here, there's a little bit of trading for Potato, though Giga, again, knowing the limits of this champion, just going to zoom himself away with that super mega bravery shield there on the the Galaxy Rumble. As you were mentioning, though, Akali is just such a tricky champion. You heard on the desk that Ezreal, very safe AD carry, but you can only be so safe from the mobility available to an Akali in the hands of a player like Puffles. You saw it in that last fight. Array got chunked so heavily by that champion, he just could not provide any usefulness to the team fight. And that is something that will probably become a trend here, because Puffles is going to be looking for Array in every fight. He's going to be trying to pick his moments to assassinate him or Rio. Potato getting more chunks out. 2v2 here in the top lane.
Yeah, Potato's already committed the ultimate, but with Permafrost being unable to stack and the Ezreal ult just barely going wide, everybody's gonna get out of that alive enough to be happy, while not actually getting what they came for.
Yeah, nobody getting much of anything at the moment. And to be fair, there's not a whole lot to fight over. It looks like everyone kind of wants to scrap, but there's no Drake for another minute and a half. There's no Baron on the Rift. There's just that Rift Herald, which is being started up by Age King. Gonna take him a while if he does want to do it. Maybe just taking the Scuttle Crab instead. See if he does try to get onto that Rift Herald, but with Potato backing in the top lane, I don't know if they can pull this one off. It would certainly be risky. They do see McShootums on this ward just south of the mid lane, though.
DJ, this is such a bizarre game state, because every time I look at the map and there's not an objective up, I see that the vision completely favors New Age Frost, and I'm going, what is Glaive Onyx doing? Why are they not putting down wards? But as soon as those objectives come up, I look at the map again, and I'm going, why don't New Age Frost have any vision on the objectives? Why are they so late to the setup? And I don't think that I'm wrong in either case. I mean, the minimap tells no lies, but the way that these teams are playing around the vision is what's causing such a weird game state.
Yeah, the vision is going to be an important thing here, and this is kind of what we expect from an experienced team like Glaive Onyx. They've been to the finals in this org multiple times at multiple levels here in Excellency, heavy, mid, and light league. They are well coached, they're well organized, and that's why we see their vision being invested at important moments. I mean, look at the river right now. Potato's clearing out a ward. There's another one behind him. They know how to walk in to set up and fight for vision. They're doing it now because this Drake is coming up. This is where they want to focus, and they've got the timings all right here as they engage, because there's a teleport on Giga in the top lane, so he can just come in here.
Chaser's found an engage of his own, though he's separated Tooper from the team, and Tooper has to flash away. Now getting flashed on by H King, but Chaser is left all alone with the other 3 members. Tooper is going to fall, and it's going to be a 1-for-1 as that last cask is going to connect under the tower. But Dragon Priority once again belongs to Glaive Esports, and they've got a bunch of damage to follow it up as the Death Ball comes into their own jungle and is going to clean up the remainder of New Age Frost.
Oh no, it's a complete disaster here as Puffles is just going insane in this fight, and it's a perfect fight for him. It's so split, Dia. It's so chaotic. Akali's thrive in that situation. Puffles just predatory nature. You're picking off kill after kill. He gets 3. They get the Drake, and it's such a misidentification of how that fight needs to go there from New Age. Yeah, they see the Tooper going low, but he's a lethality Varus, Dia. He's going to put out some damage, sure, but you can't just leave a Rumble alone. You can't just leave the Akali alone and completely split the fight. It just makes it so easy for Glaive to group up, for Puffles just pick off straggling members, and they eventually just wear them down with their damage over time. You get the 80 carry, you lose everything for it. This game breaking open here for Glaive.
And it's so hard to kill this squad as well. We're going to see the squad group up around the bot lane and find it rather easy to kill Protato at the same time, because look at all of them. A Rumble, a Sejuani, and an Akali is what this comp is built on the backs of. Akali's got a Zanya's to buy her time, a 10-stack Dark Seal to top off her damage, and Giga's got more or less the same. Yes, he doesn't have the Dark Seal, but that Zanya's is getting him a lot of tankiness into the heavy AD from New Age Frost, and the Sejuani couldn't be any tankier.
Yeah, everybody here on the top side of the map absolutely stacked for Glaive Esports Onyx. Giga's 1-0-6 with 210 CS. You've got that tanky Sejuani. 6-0 here for Puffles, and oh no, Rio, there's nowhere you can go. There's so much CC. Poor
Puffles
man.
crosses so much of the screen right there with the Proto Belt and Shuriken flip dashing around everywhere. Does end up picking up the kill, but now Tooper's getting engaged on one more time, and what a Lantern ends up saving him from all of that. Might actually turn the fight entirely. Jat's gonna flash away as well. The equalizer has come down. Chaser's gonna get sniped out. Oh no, New Age Frost. This is not how it was ever intended to go. Potato is doing his best to try and salvage the team fight, but it is just New Age Frost being ripped apart by Glaive Esports Onyx.
Yeah, Potato gonna try and turn it around, but he can't do enough. 1-4 now on this Gwen. Doesn't have a mythic item completed, and Glaive just have an answer for everything that New Age want to do. They have been downloaded, they have been read. Their scrappy style is being picked apart here as Glaive have all the answers for teleports, extra members, whatever the case may be. They're reading the plays, they're setting up vision early, and New Age cannot find the skirmishes they need to pick off members and get away with their lives intact. Every time they make a play, it is being turned, and they have lost complete control over this match.
Now, I did really like what New Age Frost were doing earlier, and I beg them, New Age Frost, if you're listening, go back to it, because the side lane looked tough for Rio. He got caught out, but at least it drew 2 people for the price of 1. And the fact is that unless you are getting Rio side laning, unless you are getting Potato doing the same thing, the golden experience that they have is never going to match up to Puffles and to Giga, even if you're picking off Tooper every single time.
Yeah, you need to make something different happen here, regardless of what that is. And the fighting hasn't been working as we get fighting in mid lane. But again, look who's here first. It's Giga. Every single time, he's always going to have priority. 2 items completed in that top lane, nearly 3. He's going to be there first. Glaive is going to be there first. You just can't take these sort of fights. So I do agree with you, Dia, that we need a different look from New Age. This is an Ezreal. A Raymate can sit here with 1 member and soak up waves for all of eternity. Get your carries on their side lanes. Try to 1-3-1 this and see if you can get a member in an isolated scenario. Even if a second member comes up, you can answer somewhere else. I know 1-3-1s are really hard to execute, but when you're 6k gold down, you got to make something different happen.
The comps are always going to be hard to execute, but executing Mashudums is going to be nigh on impossible. The damage, though, does come through from Protato. With Jat overcommitting, it's going to be another kill going over. Now arrives Puffles, and it's just him and Tooper against the world. They're going to decide they cannot take that fight, and interestingly enough, Glaive Esports Onyx lose 3 for nothing, really.
Yeah, 3 for 1 there. Rio, the only member to fall. A nice snipe from the Tooper, but it's the first time all game that we've seen a little bit of miscoordination from Glaive. It's the first time that New Age have had numbers up in a fight. All 5 of them are there. Puffles, without a TP, without the ability to join, is nowhere near the fight. And I like that New Age recognized that and pulled the trigger right away. We said we needed to see something different. That's a little more of the same, but it is good recognition finally that they actually have an advantage, that they're taking into account all of the variables on the table, and now they could potentially stop this Soul Drake here as the Drake has spawned.
I'm really worried about this. With the staggers already being a little bit rough, it could be a bad spot for Glaive, but Jat lands another hook, and it doesn't look like New Age Frost are actually finding an engage. Instead, it's the Rumble ultimate that comes down. Zanyas needs to come out from Giga, but he doesn't have it. Instead, it is Puffles that is all over that Drake, all over Potato. The Dragon ends up going over to Glaive Esports Onyx, and now they are all over the faces of New Age Frost as Puffles dashes and slashes his way around the team fight with McShootums on top of Array, and nothing that he can do about it. Giga's gonna collapse with the flamethrower. Barbecue and Ezreal and Glaive are gonna take the fight.
No, Glaive, do it again here, and it's Puffles just smurfing all over them with this Akali, finding his way into the backline once again, creating chaos and havoc, and they even steal the Drake away to complete the Cloud Soul Dia. It's complete disaster for New Age. They found their best play of the game, and they immediately fall flat on their faces as they attempt to take an objective. They're going to lose the Baron as well, and they're looking at an uphill battle here. 7k gold down against Soul and Baron. This is looking like a clean game 1 coming in from Glaive.
And now with this Baron, you can really do whatever you like, but what I'm expecting fully is a nice 1-4. Normally I'd say you push down as 5 members, and I don't even believe that's a suboptimal play here. But Puffles needs to find some glory on his own, I think. He's coming out of this game going, yeah, I'm 8-0, but I could look for just a little more damage, a little more glory in these fights. And unless it's a penta, it's got to be several 1v1s.
Yeah, I do want a 1-4 here, and you can see Puffles already heading down to that bottom lane. Does not have TP, so keep your eyes on a potential flank angle from H-King. We've been asking for this all game. He needs to find a clever angle to set up a combo because Puffles cannot join, just like in the last fight.
All right, teleport comes in, but an equalizer, interestingly, to disengage leaves Chaser up Creek without half his health bar. And with Puffles coming in on the side, I think Glaive Esports, they found a fight that they want to take. Puffles has the flank, and there's no vision on it. Chaser might go down, has to flash away as McShootums charges in. Another hook lands from Jet, and you're being sieged under your mid lane tower, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, this is a really nice spot here for Tooper's Varus to just pepper them with damage over the top. You can just sit and wait for picks for damage over the top as the minions chip away at the turrets. I like that Puffles has gone back down to the bottom lane to threaten that turret as well. This is nice macro play from Glaive. It's everything we expect from a championship contender here as they take down the tier 2 mid and start to push into the enemy base.
You thought Equalizer was on a short cooldown? Wait till you get Cloud Soul. It just gets even worse. Zanya's does get popped from Giga, and a nice Lantern brings him right back to safety, but he's done his job clearing away New Age Frost, and another hook lands from Jat to maybe even start the fight. Puffles is in here already, having rotated up from the bot lane, and Rio, even with the last breath, cannot do the job, cannot finish off Tooper, where Puffles goes golden to try and survive. I'm not sure they can even finish off his perfect scoreline. Potato does go invulnerable, though, and is causing problems. Array has been able to free fire for most of the team fight and gets everybody very low, but the thing is the actual last hits, they can't be found, DJ. Even when New Age Frost perform immaculately to stay alive, they can't win the fight.
Yeah, they can't quite clean it up there, and it's just a little unfortunate that Potato was set so far behind. He's now 4-5-1 after cleaning up, I believe, 2 kills in that fight. But again, imagine if he had been 4 kills earlier on. That is the cleanup. You can see how strong this champion is at the end of that fight, stacking up the Riftmaker, doing so much damage there with the help of a Raymate. They turn back the siege coming in from Glaive, but they do still lose their mid lane tier 3 and their inhibitor. So I won't call it a perfect A here coming in from Glaive, but they'll at least take the B, the first inhibitor, and the first structure in the base to fall, giving them a ton of map control. And now you can see doing their due diligence as we would expect, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, pushing the line of vision further and further. They're going to look for a pick into a potential objective and try to end the game. That next potential objective, of course, Elder Drake spawning in a minute and a half.
Is it just me, or do you feel awful for Chaser right there? He was doing so well, sidestepping all the poke, just trying to clear out the one control ward. He finally gets to free hit it, and they just place another one and take it away. That is just tragic. He has been trying his hardest on the Nautilus, landing hooks all game, and he can't catch a break, man.
Yeah, life of a support here for Chaser. He's really the only one that can kind of face tank the bushes too. H-King has gone for an AP build, as I do think you need to on this Gragas to really accentuate the burst damage, but Chaser kind of has to walk in as the lead or solo to fight for vision, to set up vision, and they're just going to have more wards and more access to warding spots than you are at this point of the game, so always feels like a little bit of a struggle, and oh no, H-King!
He's just not very tanky is the thing there. It might be a good build, but right now, even Chaser, who has gone for the health, can't keep up. Rio gets a nice flank and does go golden, along with Potato, actually managed to clean up Jat with Giga flashing away. You've got to finish off the fight now. It's already in a numbers advantage, but Puffles goes in, gets out as well with that clutch shuriken flip to finish off Potato, and it's an even numbered fight where Glaive Esports, they're actually going to be the ones backing off.
Oh, and Puffles is just going Herculean in these fights, man. He had a third of his HP left when he goes back in there over the wall, able to find the snipe onto Potato that looked like a fight that New Age could win. Array was dishing out the damage. Potato was healing up, using the runes, using the items. The snipe's going to be so huge here to make sure they don't just lose the Draconomic Shoot'ems.
He's a little alone right now, does have to flash the wall, but it's a big equalizer that comes down on top of every member of New Age Frost and ultimately claims the life of Rio as Puffles wants to claim a few more. On this, Akali is so ridiculously fed that, well, he should be playing a little more respectfully. You can see he fears no man.
I don't even know if he needs to. The ulti's back up here. I think Puffle's just going to clean him up. There he goes!
Oh my god! We were looking for the smite steal and it just was never a possibility. Puffles cleans it up. The Elder Dragon goes down and that should be the game.
That is just going to be game. Once again, Puffles playing it so well here. 11-0-4 on the Sakali. What a performance from the Glaive Esports Onyx mid laner. Absolutely running over this game. Potato will do his best to clear the minions and stay alive, but it's not going to be enough. This should be the end of game 1.
Today I learned that even in Gwen Shroud, you can still be one-shot by the Elder Dragon. That is unfortunate, and it's as unfortunate as they come, as New Age Frost are even going to throw in that extra little compliment of a surrender at the last minute. Glaive Esports Onyx really took it to him there.
Yes, they did, Dia. It was a very nice performance from Glaive overall. It'd be a great way to start the series for them. I think looking back on the game, they will regret pretty much one play and one play only. That one on the bottom side of the Baron pit where Puffles was not around the fight. They kind of got picked out and lost 3 members. They turned it right back around at the Drake, made up for their mistake, took the soul, took the Baron, and then cleaned up the game in very efficient fashion, I would say. So there will be some points that they can work on, but I think Glaive going to be very happy with how that game 1 went, particularly if you are one man named Puffles, who was absolutely godlike in that performance and may just be drawing Akali bans for the rest of the series.
Yeah, we were talking about Rumble and Gwen, but I'd be surprised if we even see that Akali get through the first couple picks. As you so astutely mentioned, we're not the only ones here with opinions on the game, though. Besides the players, we've also got analysts in the back that I'm sure have a lot to say about how exactly Glaive managed to dismantle New Age Frost in such convincing fashion. Necrox and RMC, please enlighten me.
Thank you. And opinions are aplenty over here after that performance on the Akali from Puffles. Club Penguin is still alive, RMC. Who knew after all this time the Puffles would come out in full force and being cute and cuddly and deadly as ever?
Hey man, the Puffles MIA. MIA pings didn't come up. Puffles kill everyone. Apparently that's how this works. And you know what? We said in the analyst desk earlier that Puffles on this Akali would have to show up big, had so many targets to kill, and I was worried that Akali can only focus on one target at a time. Turns out, who knew? The answer is to go 11-0-1-4, and then you can kill all three.
I mean, we had so many question marks about not only what the team fight was able to do, whether it is the Rumble equalizer into the Gwen or leaving up champions for so long. We didn't even like the lane positions. I mean, to be fair, yes, the Gwen got ganked really early, and then that didn't work out. It was sort of maybe disrespect from the likes of Vision, but outside of that, it's just simple mechanical outplays, whether it's missing skill shots here and there, misplays on engages on bot side, Tuper getting really, really strong on the Varus as well. But of course, it all just comes down to execution. And even if you draft something like this and you give up so many power picks, if you're that far ahead and you get that many mechanical advantages over your opponents, you're always going to pull out the series. And they struggled a little bit to end sort of cleanly, as you were talking to me before. But overall, I mean, it's just they're just so far ahead. They just hit you with their wallets.
Pretty much here. And to me, what really struck me was that dragon fight where it ended up spilling over into the mid lane, and the way Puffles didn't die and Rio kind of did. Like that, to me, that was just the game in a nutshell right there. Glaive, Onyx, Puffles just played too well on the Akali. And if you've got this much point and click CC, this much lockdown, and you can't take down the Akali, then you've got issues. And I think that Akali makes bad list here, because that Akali was pseudo blind picked. You saw the Yasuo here, and ultimately that was the lane matchup they opted for. But for New Age Frost, I mean, you could have sent the Yasuo top potentially, you know, done something else, dealt with the Akali. I thought the Nautilus was the answer. I was wrong.
I mean, I was wrong. I was on the same board with you, but I mean, Dia mentioned this a little bit earlier on and sort of transitioning away from the individual play of each of these star-studded players from Glaive, Onyx, returning championship organization. Dia said the minimap doesn't tell lies, and this is something that we had a long, in-depth conversation about while we were watching that game. The setup from Glaive is so good. They have vision control everywhere, every single time, at every critical objective. It feels they're the first ones to it, and it's Jado getting groundwork in along with the jungler, just laying down wards and making sure that the moment you step up, Puffles can go in and clean up a fight on the back end.
And like DJ said, it's not just getting vision down, it's getting vision down at the right timing. New Age Frost had vision constantly down, but they were always just expiring, you know, 30 seconds before, 20 seconds before, and that gives Glaive, Onyx almost the perfect window to walk and set up their own and have it ready for the fight. And then New Age suddenly's like, where'd my vision go? Everything went out, everything went fuzzy, and then they just kind of have to try and brute force. Granted, they almost succeeded in brute forcing a couple of them, and I don't think the vision was ultimately what cost them the game, but it's something that they do need to clean up if they want a hope of trying to come back when behind.
It reminded me of that 3-ward vision line we saw in mid lane. Sort of drawing the line in the sand, you shall not pass this ward line. Yeah, at that point, after Soul, after Baron, New Age Frost knew that game was all but wrapped up. And going into game 2, looking in the future for these teams, things have to change. I think even Glaive Onyx is going to have some things to change in draft.
For sure here. I mean, I honestly think Glaive Onyx just gave up too much, right? The fact that they struggled to close with Puffles being, what was it, 9-0-4, I think, before that final fight, already tells you that you're giving up too many advantages here. The Gwen, yes, Potato went down in lane, but Potato is looking cleaner on that Gwen this time and almost managed to turn it around. The combo coming through really, really strong as well. And my biggest question for this draft is going to be that Thresh, because Jado looked way too good on that Thresh. We said that, hey, you know, Chase is really good on it too, and now Glaive is going to be on... Glaive is on blue side for this draft here, so technically they can just first pick that Thresh again if they want.